Beside her, two figures representing chemistry with fire and retort are watching the vapor rise. The figures of history with a book and science with mathematical instruments are next. Following these, we see the figures representing arts and literature. At the extreme right, three men symbolize manual labor as they hammer on an anvil. This central panel represents the hours of pleasure, or the flying hours. We see 8 female figures wearing swirling robes and flying in a circle. The robes of sapphire, blue, green, violet, rose, and yellow stand out beautifully against the gold background. This panel represents the evening hours. It is stronger and darker in color than the others, and it's full of the suggestion of the evil that lurks in the darkness. Here, a figure representing the moon drives a chariot drawn by 2 black horses. She's accompanied by a figure bearing the olive branch of peace, followed by vendetta. She is the female figure dressed in black robes with a dagger in her hand poised to strike. Then comes 2 figures representing Somnus, the god of sleep. At the right of the panel, the peasants are returning from labor, and above them floats a figure symbolizing protection and rest. The panel over the alcove represents the hours of sleep. In the center are the sleeping hours, represented by 8 female figures in various positions of rest. Some cherubs on the left draw a veil of night over them. Good and bad dreams are both represented. Good dreams by the female wearing a crimson robe and carrying a golden urn in her hands. Above her is a figure representing bad dreams wearing black robes with a snake and rod of thorns. On the right comes dawn, attended by 2 figures, one carrying a lantern and the other playing a motif on the violin to awaken them. Notice in the lower right-hand corner where the artist signed his work, Chaglaris, 1904.
I've been asked to tell you all about my experience when I first came to this library. I didn't come to the library until I was 8 years old. The reason why is because I lived so far out of the center of town that I was too young to walk it. So when I moved closer to the library, the first thing I did was hustle up here to find out what it was about. Came to the door, and a big bronze door, and I said, I'll never get anywhere with this door. But I turned the knob and it slid right open up just perfectly. And got into where the library was, which was on the floor downstairs, and they walked in, and I thought I'd gone to heaven. There was all these books. I said, oh boy, am I going to have a time with these books. So I went to the librarian, and I enrolled, got my card, and she explained I could get 2 books, and I had 2 weeks to read the books and bring them back. Wow. Walked around, couldn't decide what I was going to get for a book. Finally, I got 2 books. One was for fairy tale, and one was about children in another country. Took my...
Stepping back 100 years, we see the delivery room as it looked when the library opened in 1904. For many years, library patrons would enter the delivery room and request their books from the librarian who sat behind this desk. She would have one of the staff retrieve the books and deliver them to the patron. To borrow a metaphor from Socrates, a library should be the delivery room for the birth of ideas, a place where history comes to life. This room is richly decorated with mahogany walls and built-in benches. Above the librarian's desk is frosted leaded glass in a beehive pattern. The delivery room has miniature and full-size fluted columns with egg and dart capitals. On the wall is the library's acceptance to the National Historic Register, dated April 23, 1975. The National Historic Register is the official list of the nation's cultural resources worthy of preservation. We are fortunate to have 3 photographs of the library as it looked in 1904. First is a photo of the exterior of the library. Next, we see the delivery room and then the reading gallery. The light fixtures in this room are original. The room now contains the library's main computer catalog area and is connected to the Minuteman Library Network. Along the frieze are 4 panels painted by Henry Hammond Gallison. These panels depict deserts in various perspectives. The Arabian Desert is presented at moonlight and shows a caravan of camels and their attendants crossing the sand under the light of the moon. The Arabian Desert at twilight shows the silhouette of a city against the evening sky and the tombs of the caliphs. This panel is the Mexican Desert at sunset. The sand is the focus, but the painting is tinted with the colors of sunset. A small oasis can be seen in the distance, and in the foreground, birds are feeding. And last, this panel shows the Mexican desert at noon. The heat rises from the sand and the desert stretches into the distance. The ruins of a stone temple stand in the foreground.
When I first came to this library, I know my mother brought me. And so I always say that I considered it a rite of passage when I was old enough to open the big bronze doors by myself. The kids that I played with finally too were able to come. We'd come here together. Actually, it was a home away from home. And we used to sneak up the back stairs. We were not supposed to be there, and so we'd always try to tiptoe. And of course, adults know that just when children are trying to be especially quiet, they're probably making more noise. And I know May Holmes, who was the librarian at the desk out here, heard us, but she was good and didn't come out unless we really got noisy. And so before this panel was put up, we had the glass door, and we used to sneak over to that door to look at the then risque murals in the reading room. We thought that was a big deal. We have on my right a painting of Emily and Joseph Ray. Emily was a Rockwood from Bellingham, and perhaps my only claim to fame because she was my grandfather's first cousin. That's as near as I'll get to an important person. The Ray family came from Mendon to what we used to call Unionville, you now call Forge Park. And they settled there and really started the Industrial Revolution in Franklin. They were people who got their money through the mills, but also gave back to the town.
I'm Vicki Bushanio. I've worked here at the Franklin Public Library for almost 20 years. I remember coming here as a child and how awesome the building was. As a child, it's almost like going to church. And in those days, the library was a quiet place. It was the day of shushing and that type of thing. Now it's the days of cranking printers and computers and lots of noise. We loved the glass floor. You could see down. The second floor was all glass, and it crunched under your feet. It had a very interesting feel and look to it, and you could see all around you. The light passed beautifully through the windows, through the floors. It just had a really beautiful look to it. And I was here during the renovation of the library in the late 1980s, where we actually added a wing onto the library at that time, as well as did some interior work.
City's guardian. The people offered various sacrifices